Hi friends, welcome to my channel. I'm Jamae, and today we're going to get into my second half thoughts of When Chickenheads Come Home to Roost by Joan Morgan. A hip-hop feminist breaks it down. Now, there is a part one to this video on my page. If you have not watched it, stop this video and go watch that one. Okay, I'm gonna give you a second to do that if you haven't already. Okay, I think they're gone. Second half thoughts. To recap my first half thoughts, um, I was after reading part one, right? I had a lot of mixed feelings, right? I was very frustrated, but I also really wanted a lot of people to read the book still. I wanted to connect with people who had read the book because I was just so stressed about the contents of the book that I really couldn't see anything beyond that. And unfortunately for me, I sat down and I finished the second half of the book, and I still had those same problems, right? I was still stressed. I was annoyed. I was mad. I was honestly a little bit shocked at some of the things that I don't even think I should have been shocked, but it was still shocking to me, some of the things that were said in this book. And I was just really frustrated because, again, this book was supposed to be this revolutionary text that changed the lives of so many women, and a lot of women in academics at that. A lot of women who talk about feminism now, and just it seemed to be the baseline for a lot of people, and that frustrated me because I walked into this book thinking I'm gonna immediately understand why this was revolutionary for the time, and I didn't. And even right now, thinking about that, um, I kind of get it. I kind of understand. I think I understand a little bit more now than I did 3, 4 weeks ago when I finished this book. But I'm still frustrated. And so we're going to get into that. Um, I want to start by saying that Joan Morgan wrote this book as a way to get regular black women um, into black feminist politics. And I say it like that because one of her big things was, I don't want to have to use academic jargon. I don't want this to be too complicated. I want a woman who would sit down and read a magazine to be able to read this book in the same way. And I do have to give her her tens for that because I absolutely think that she achieved that. And when I, one, had a friend read this book, and two, posted it on my Bookstagram, and both times I had a person tell me that they really appreciated the rawness and the honesty in this book, and just um, Morgan just going out there and actually just like challenging a politic, and that's something that really hasn't been done. Excuse me. And I think that is part of the reason why I can see why it was revolutionary, because she does challenge it. She does ask us to consider things and to maybe to consider how we approach a number of topics. And so I am appreciative of her for one, writing this book, and just being as honest as she did about it. However, I'm not giving her tens for some of the contents of this book, because like I said, I'm not happy about it. I don't I did not enjoy some of the things she said, and I'm sure um, I'm sure she would be okay with that. Because another thing that I appreciate that she did, in this version of the book, um, this was released I think in like 2016 or something, re-released again, um, and at the end of it there is a um, she has an interview in it, and she's talking to um, I can't remember who the interviewer is, but basically they ask her, you know, if you could change anything about this book, would you? And she said no. And when I saw that she said no, I was like mad because I was like, girl, there are things you could fix. But she also followed up with saying, you know, this book was never meant to be perfect. There are issues with the book. And she recognizes that and she accepts it um, for what it is. And I do think I appreciate that in to some extent. Just knowing that like this could just be a starting point for someone. Like this should not be your end. This is not where your politics should stop. And so I appreciate her kind of making that point. Um, because I think the thing about politics is that they should be ever evolving, right? When you get new information, you should start changing some things. Um, and so, yeah, claps to her for that. However, the things that I did not like, other than the fact that like I feel like this book is filled with misogyny, um, and what one of my friends helped me point out, it's just like it's very heteronormative. Like you can absolutely tell that a straight woman wrote this book. Um, and two, that is another thing that she acknowledges. Like at the end, she talks about how she would have been more aware of queer theory and pleasure politics, and because I think that would have expanded her worldview a little bit more. And one of the things that's important to note for me, um, because one of the things she also mentions in this book is in that interview is that she says that there are black feminists now who don't acknowledge her or don't acknowledge her work. Um, and I thought that was funny, but honestly, I get it. Like I feel like if anybody, when I think about black feminism, I think about the Combahee River Collective. And to me, there's no way Joan Morgan read their work or did any research about them or what their values were uh, before she wrote this book. Like, it almost feels like this was a book of like, these are all the things that like feminism as it relates to my current life, and did not think about black women as a whole. And she wrote this book like with just that in mind. And while I can understand that, you only can write about your worldview. To the idea of tackling black feminism and trying to get people introduced to it, and trying to analyze why there hasn't been um, a large scale black feminist movement without doing like some of this research just falls flat to me. And I think that's why a lot of the misogyny in it is really bothering me. I mean, misogyny should bother everybody, but it really made it hard for me to agree with her, or like y'all don't know how many times I asked, is she being for real right now? Um, and I'm gonna just get into some of the things that she said that really, really rubbed me the wrong way. Not even that, not even just rubbed me the wrong way, but just some of the things that she talked about in here. Um, One of them, from there's a chapter called Love Notes, um, which I thought, and this is the funny thing, is that the chapter be going so good, and then she get to the end, and then she just says something that I'm like, my eye twitching. Um, so, for example, in Love Notes, she's talking about like not falling in love with a man's potential, and not spending time with men she doesn't respect, um, and which I think those are both important things. Um, but it's heteronormative as one, because you only thinking about it in terms of a man. When two, those are just values you should have in a relationship. Period. Like those are just things you should move in the world with. But it really started to make me like, because she said, I'm gonna stop bashing men, and I'm gonna stop talking. I'm gonna stop constantly talking to women who bash men, and I'm only going to talk to women who are in successful relationships. And I think that that's such a slippery slope of an idea, because we don't know what people are doing in their relationships, right? Like, you don't, your friend's relationship could be successful for a number of reasons that you just don't know. And I just think that that's kind of such a short-sighted thing to say, as if women who are not in who are not currently in a successful relationship don't have valuable advice to give. And so that just felt a little like, sister, I didn't like that. um, and then this probably was this next chapter was called Baby Mother. This probably was the most controversial part of the book for me. And the most frustrating. And what I'm glad I watched my first video back, because I recognized that she sort of repeated herself. So in the first part of the book, she talked about um, how, women should give more men options when it comes to reproductive rights. And she expands this thought in her Baby Mother chapter, basically saying that black women have been taught or raised or have will we've gathered around this idea that we don't need men when we're raising a family. And it was just kind of hard for me to take it seriously, because she was one focusing on this idea of men having equal rights when it comes to gender, or when it comes to reproductive rights. And my real issue with this is that women cannot get pregnant by themselves. Like that, like it really does take two people to tango. Like it's not, unless there's some sort of very extreme circumstance, that man played a part in creating that baby. And her main point was that women have the right to abort a baby if they don't want one. And so men should have a right to, say that they don't want to be a dad if they're not ready to be a dad, or if they don't want that kid, they don't have to be their kid. But where it falls apart to me is she explicitly starts to talk about how child support happened, how men are being put on child support, and like men and women have bad relationships with each other, and all of that kind of stuff. And she mentions that women don't even get child support. So I was like, how can you say men should be getting more rights out of a situation when they're clearly not even meeting the demands that are already in place, right? If you're saying this man has a baby and he has to at least, like, financial support is the very bare minimum of what a man should provide. And at least that's the world we live in. That's by law. And she's saying men should have more choices to get out of that, and I just, nothing about that is in my opinion radical. Giving men scapegoats. You're saying that the men who are already not paying their child support, who are not taking care of their kids, should have just had a choice to say no anyway, even if you decide you wanted to keep the baby. Like, where is the conversations about men taking more responsibility for their actions? Like, did we consider that? I don't know. It was just it was just it was odd, and I did not like it. And again, heteronormative, because one of the other things she mentions is that um, society is starting to fall apart because of the cornerstones. We've lost the cornerstones of monogamy, marriage, and the nuclear family. And I'm just really trying to think about when those things were specifically working for black people, right? Like the nuclear family, those two kids, a wife and a husband, like, when has that ever worked for black people? Black people have always been about community. When has that ever When has that ever been a thing, you know? And even into the monogamy point, like, I think we're using monogamy to mean people committed to a relationship, but they're not really the same thing, right? Like, or committed to your family, like they're not the same thing. Being committed to your family doesn't mean that you have to be in a relationship with this just one person. But I get for the 90s that I get why she said it that way, but like, no. 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 um yeah, I didn't like that. I didn't like that at all. And then and she kept saying to stop seeing men as optional. And you know what? I agree with that sentiment. I agree with the idea that men shouldn't it, men shouldn't be optional in um, in the process of raising a family. And I get that. That's why we were saying she's. I guess that's why it follows her point to like give men more choice. But no, and this is how we got to the child support thing anyway, because we didn't women didn't want men to be optional. They wanted them to participate. So anyway, it was just a lot. It was just a lot happening in that chapter. But basically, don't have kids until you're actually ready to have children. Um, she's saying to do it, with the man who you care about and all the things. Anyways, anyways, um, anyways, that felt odd. So I didn't like that. Um, and then the rest of the book, there's another chapter in there called Chickenhead Envy, and it's essentially talking about how like women who did things the right way have been envious of women who are considered chickenheads. Um, women who only care about their body and getting money from men and doing these things. Um, and she ultimately ends the chapter saying, um, first of all, there's an interview in there where she's like interviewing all of these, like, it's not like a full interview, but she asks these like powerful men at the time, which were AKA P. Diddy, um, you know, what they look for in a woman, right? And what they would want in a woman in the long term. And they're all, of course, all the men are like, yeah, like, being beautiful is good up front, but, at the end of the day, I want somebody, who is smart and can take care of me and take care of themselves and all of this, the things that men say when they're old and they want a wife. And so they're saying other stereotypical things, and she's like ending it off with being like, you know, so yeah, like, listen to them, don't be a chicken head. And I'm like, like, for one, I was like, this did not age well because P. Diddy is a terrible man. Um, and two, it feels like misogyny. Like, women are gonna win what? Affection from men? Affection from men who've slept around with all the chicken heads? I don't, I get just, it's just unnecessary. Just very completely unnecessary misogyny. And I did not like it. I was not a fan of that. Um, the one interesting thing I did think that she added, and something that I'm still kind of sitting with too, is she wrote a newer article and it was about Beyonce, and she's talking about how Beyonce is a feminist. Um, and I think I completely understand what she's saying and why she thinks Beyonce is a feminist. And you know what? I'll even let her have that. Um, but I think it's just a funny, like, it's a funny, it's a funny thing to say, especially since Beyonce is like a billionaire. I don't know. I'm not saying you can't be a billionaire and you can't be a feminist. Um, but I think my overall problem is just that the ideas kind of felt half baked. You know, I do think they are very good conversation starters, and that is also why I'm still saying that like people absolutely should read the book. Um, read the book, interrogate, interrogate the things that she's saying. I did. And honestly, I think again, it kind of helps you think about your own politics a lot more. Um, personally, if you want to read that, I came into Black feminism. I think I said earlier in the video through the Combahee River Collective, um, and I have this book called How We Get Free by Kienga Yamada Taylor. It basically has the Combahee River Collective at the beginning of it, and then she interviews Barbara Smith, Beverly Smith, Demita Frazier, Alicia Garza, and Barbara Ransby. Um, and all of them are not. Yeah, Alicia Garza is the Black Lives Matter founder. But the rest of them are like were members of the Combahee River Collective, and basically like they talk about what their feminism was, and the basis of all of their feminism was the most marginalized people, and I think that's why some of the ideas that Joan Morgan presents feel a little half baked to me because they're very like, I don't want to call them selfish, but that's honestly kind of the best word I can think of. Like they're very like, how can my life improve with this one thing? Um, and honestly, I just don't think she like challenges you to do anything further. Um, and one of the and this is too one of the critiques that she noted is that people didn't like that she didn't have theory in her book. Um, and I think that's part of the problem. Like, I think there's a way to talk about theory in layman's terms. I do. I do. I think, and I think we have to get beyond this idea that like regular people can't understand theory because they can, especially if it's explained well. If you understand something, um, and you can write well, you can portray an idea, and so um, that's I guess just like kind of my takeaway. Um, obviously, if you guys want, like I said in the beginning, like politics is something that's always evolving. It's always time to like learn something new, but definitely like let me know. If you want other like feminist books that I've read, I can definitely will be happy to share. Also share feminist books that you've read and you think that are helpful, and talk about feminism in a thorough way, whether it's academic or not, because I do think a part of developing your politics is struggling through some things. Like everything can't be handed to you. You have to think through some stuff. So, yeah, those are my final thoughts on When Chickenheads Come Home to Roost by Joan Morgan. I hope you guys enjoyed.